Hello, everybody. I'd like to introduce you to Dunn Ballam, who's going to talk to you all the way from Lanzarote. Welcome, John.
Hi guys, thanks for having me.
Pleasure.
Right, do I need to do this screen share now?
You can do, yeah.
Yeah, give me 1 second. Right, there we go. Okay, you should all be seeing the slides.
We can.
Right. Okay, so hi everyone. As Dawn said, I'm Dunn Ballam, and I have been a full-time yarn dyer and knitwear designer for the last 15 years. That seems like a long time now. Yeah, so I'm going to talk you through what I do, how I got to where I am, and show you some of the things that I do. And I'm going to run you through it all on this slideshow. So let's get started, shall we? So I've been a knitter since I was 7 years old. I was taught by my grandma and by my mum, as I'm sure most of you were at some point. And I've always been a creative person. I always was studying art at school and textiles and three-dimensional studies and things like that. So at college, I did an art and design diploma, and then I moved on to university and I studied graphic design. At the time, that was really where my interests lay, because I was quite a computer whiz and interested in the way things looked visually, layouts and photography and things like that. And I graduated university, and I was in university in Staffordshire, and I moved to London in 2003, and I started a job at a magazine, and it was really, really riveting, really, really exciting. It was a foreign exchange magazine made for bankers and people on FX platforms. So it was really dull. I didn't really enjoy it. And I picked up my knitting again and joined a knitting group. And it was a knitting group that met locally in central London at different bars, pubs, and cafes every 2 weeks. And I really got back into my knitting then. So that was probably 2004 when that started again. And then the organisers of that knitting group, they owned a yarn shop, and it was called I Knit London. I believe it's closed down a few years ago now, but we used to meet in the bars and pubs and drink and knit and drop stitches and things like that. And then once a month we'd meet up in the shop, and we all went there to buy our yarns for knitting and discussed our latest projects and what we were going to be working on. And I was really, really interested in knitting socks. I love the construction of them. I just love how you can create this wearable garment without having to sew anything together, because I don't like sewing things together. But at the time, this is 2006, 2007, all of the sock yarns that you could buy were just dull, boring, beige, brown. So I just did some research online, and I ordered some food coloring. I don't know if any of you know the American drinks brand Kool-Aid, but I found an article online that said you could dye yarn with Kool-Aid. So I ordered some Kool-Aid from eBay. I ordered some undyed yarn from eBay. And then within 6 months, the owners of I Knit London were stocking yarn that I was dyeing. And all of the members of the knitting group were thrilled with it. And they all loved buying these bright and colourful yarns that they'd never seen before. And suddenly a new world was opened up to me, with going to craft shows and yarn shows and selling this yarn, but it was all just a hobby at the time. and I was still working during the week at this boring magazine and knitting every hour of every day and dyeing yarn at weekends and going to shows around the UK selling the yarn. And in 2010, it was kind of unfortunate but fortunate at the same time. My job, they couldn't afford to keep me full time. There was a crash in the markets, foreign exchange. Some banks went under, and they said, "We can't pay you full time, so we'll take your contract. We'll make it part time," which then gave me 2 more days a week to focus on Easy Knits. And then from there, within 6 months, I'd given up the job and taken Easy Knits full time. And yeah, from there it just grew. I worked from home for a few years, and then I took up a studio space in London, just on the River Thames. It was a special arts space for creatives, and it was, at the time, it was called Second Floor Studios, because all of the studios were on top of a factory, so they were all on the second floor of this old factory down on the River Thames. And then they changed the name and rebranded it to Thameside Studios. And if any of you are in the London area, you might know it, because there are jewellers there and artists, painters, textile artists there. There's lots and lots of different creative people there. And I had a studio there at Thameside from 2013 until December 2021, when we moved over to Lanzarote. So now I'm back working at home. I've converted a garage space in a house here in Lanzarote into a studio, and I dye yarn down there and ship it all around the world, really. I have customers in America, Australia, in Asia, still all of my UK customers, and now a lot of local customers in the Canary Islands as well. So let's talk a little bit about what I do. So easyknits.co.uk is the name that I gave my business way back when it started. And it was a blog to begin with, an online journey looking at my knitting. So Easy Knits it was just where I was talking about what I found easy to knit, and it just stuck. And by the time I was selling yarn, the name was already there and people knew me as easyknits.co.uk. So it kind of stuck. So I'm mostly known for bright, vivid colours, super saturated yarns, and luxurious yarn bases. If any of my customers, if you spoke to them, they'd say that's what they come to me for. They come because I usually dye wild and wacky colours that not many people would put together. And it's just my sort of USP. And I also design garments as well. So I design hats, scarves, shawls, socks, sweaters, you name it. If you can knit it, I'll design it. I love to be creative with different stitch patterns and things like that. So as I say, Easy Knits is an online store, so you can see all of the yarns there, and you can see all of my designs there. And also do go to craft shows around well, it was around the UK. Now it's, at the moment, we've got craft shows in Gran Canaria, in Madrid. I will be back in the UK attending more shows later in the year, but we're still in the process of getting everything set up again since we moved here in December 21. It's taken a little while, but we're getting there. And I also teach as well. So I teach basic knitting skills. I can teach more complex things like knitting socks, or techniques like two-handed color work if you need to do fair isle work and you don't want to be dropping and picking up tails of yarn. And I've been doing that for a long while. I've taught all around the UK and even in Sweden as well. So moving on, and here are some examples of the sort of things that I dye. So as I said, I'm known for my bright and vivid colors. So we have solid colors, which are super saturated and bright. And this is just a small selection of some of the basic colors that sell really well for me. But there are many shades in between that. I think the last count I had 21 solid colors that I've made recipes for and sell on the website. And then we have variegated yarns, which are short, sharp color changes. And in a few slides, you'll see some examples of these yarns knitted up, and you'll see that they're really fun and creative. Doesn't matter what you're knitting with them, they always look really good and fun. And then there's some kettle dyed yarns, which is really interesting to me to dye a kettle dyed yarn, because you simply lay the yarn in your vat or your bain-marie or whatever it is you want to use to dye the yarn, and you pour the liquid colors over and you watch them play with each other and interact. And it's a really fun process. And it just takes a little bit of time to create a repeatable recipe that will give you consistent results so that you could actually sell the yarn. And then something that isn't really in my wheelhouse was the speckled yarns, but they were very popular with some other knitwear designers. So to try and encourage people to knit with speckled yarns, I started dyeing them, and they did sell quite well for a while. And they do make some really, really pretty garments. So let's have a little look at some of so here you can see the solid colors. Now, these two yarn bases in the photographs, custom spun just for my, for Easy Knits. They were spun by a mill called the John Arbon mill down in Devon. And they were blends of rare breed sheep from the UK. And I had them made into different weight skeins, so that you could get an entire sweater out of maybe 2 or 3 skeins, because with almost hand-dyed yarns, they tend to be quite expensive. And if you wanted to knit an entire sweater out of hand-dyed yarn, you're looking at hundreds of pounds worth of yarn. So I decided I wanted larger skeins with larger amounts of meters and yards of yarn in each skein, that people could pick 2, maybe 3 skeins up, and they could knit an entire jumper out of. And these yarns I always dyed in a rainbow of solid colors, and they've always sold really, really well. Currently, I don't have them in stock on the website, but I'm hoping to get them back in. It's just getting the yarn over from the UK at the moment. So variegated colors, here you go. There's a sock in the middle that I have knit with the top left green and blue skein. You can see the variegated colors, they look really pretty in the skein and completely different when knitted up. And this is one of my custom design socks. It's really difficult to see in a photograph, but it's got like a sound wave, like a sine wave that runs through it in a delicate stitch pattern. And it was just an idea that I had, playing with colors and textures, and it's really quite fun. The variegated colors seem to sell the best for me. Knitters just love the way they look in a skein, and then the excitement of putting the skein into a ball, and then when you first cast on your project, you get to see all the colors play and dance together, and they do come out really, really pretty. And then here's an example of some kettle dyed yarn, and I dyed in various shades of reds, oranges, and burnt umber colors. And this was in a slightly heavier weight yarn, so that it would knit up a nice sweater. And that sweater I actually finished. So I think just before everybody joined the room, I was talking to Dawn about, I'm a prolific project starter. I'm sure we're all the same when it comes to new, fun, exciting projects. You can't wait to start them, and then they just get put to the side and forgotten about. So this jumper actually did get finished, and I do wear it when the weather calls for it here. But this was the kettle dyeing, where you mix up the dyes into liquid form, and then you gently pour them over the yarn, and then they blend together and mix together and give you very unique effects. And then here again, as I mentioned earlier, the speckled yarn, and the garment that I'm knitting in the picture is actually the speckled yarn, but in two different kinds of yarn. We have a superwash merino yarn, which is my regular base that I tend to dye mostly because it's just a really versatile yarn. It's a superwash merino and nylon blend, so it's perfect for socks, shawls, sweaters, hats, gloves, you name it. It's just a really versatile yarn, and the mohair is really soft, light and fluffy, and it's very, very fine. So holding those two yarns together and watching the speckles and pops of colour play together as you knit the garment, it's really quite fun. So those are just some examples of the types of yarns that you can dye. And it really is, to me, that the yarn is a canvas, and you can quite easily just play and paint and mix colours. As you can see here, this is my garage studio, which is downstairs. I had a slightly larger studio in London, but as I say, we've moved here, and now I'm working from the garage. So I have in the picture on the left, you can see I have my shelves with all my dyes, and I used acid dyes. I've toyed with the idea of natural dyes, but because I am so well known for my bright and vibrant colours, you don't really get the super intense shades with natural dyes. I have seen very bright colours from natural dyes, but not quite as easy to achieve. So I like to use my acid dyes, which you can buy online, or in quite a lot of craft stores now sell little starter packs with all your primary shades in, so you can dabble with. But as I said, when I started out, I food colouring, and I got some really good results with food colouring. So if you're considering doing this with some kids in class, it'd be brilliant just to get some yarn and some food colouring, and you just need some distilled white vinegar to set the colours. So it's not super expensive to play with, and then you can get some bright, colourful yarns. So in the middle picture, I've soaked my yarn and I have it going into a bain-marie. And then in the right picture, these are some of my solid colours, which are just hanging out to dry in the sunshine. And here I need to press play on this. There's a tiny little video just to show you the process that can go into different types of dyeing. So this is a sort of combination dyeing where I'm doing a kettle dye where I'm pouring colours over, and then a speckle dye where I'm adding pops of colour by sprinkling the powdered dye on top of the yarn. And it plays very quickly because it's a time lapse, but you hopefully will get to see. So I've soaked my yarn. I'll press play now. And you see I lay it twisted into the bain-maries. I try and be as uniform as I can to get them repeatable. So there I am sprinkling the powdered dyes on top. Then I heat set that, and then I add a colour. I heat set that, and then I add another colour, and then I heat set that. So I'm building up layers. And then the final colour goes on, and then there you see the finished yarn. So it's a subtle, muted, but tonal, so lots of beautiful teals, turquoises, blues, and then some browns and greens of speckled yarn in there. And that particular yarn was a merino and silk blend, which was super lovely to dye and even lovelier to knit with. And this is just on my Instagram, where I make these little videos for my customers to see what I'm actually doing in the studio. And as I was saying, I mostly use acid dyes, and then usually my base yarn is always superwash yarn, because it takes the dye better than a non-superwash yarn. And all of my yarns are heat set, so they're either simmered in a bain-marie, or they can be steamed to fix the dye. And when I'm using the acid dyes, I use a citric acid to exhaust the dyes. Some dyes will exhaust themselves, but others, they need a little push with the citric acid. And I usually just add that sort of 30 minutes into the cook time. And on average, it takes maybe an hour to dye a color like such as the one in the little video that I just played for you. It takes maybe an hour overall from start to finish. Once the wet yarn is put into the bain-maries and then the first speckles are added, it takes maybe 15 minutes to set that, and so on and so on. So and then usually I leave them to dry overnight and then twist the skeins the next day and then take photographs of them all. So it's a process, but it's always amazing and fun to see how the colours play with each other. So, okay. And now let's talk a little bit about some of the inspirations that that I have for my yarns. So on the left here, you can see a sunset, which is just in the next street from where we live. I was walking the dog one evening and these colors just hit the sky, and I thought that will make a great colorway for a variegated yarn. And it really did. And people love to see where the inspiration comes from. And I'm a big nerd, so as you can see in the middle picture, there's a little Grogu there from the Mandalorian TV show. If any of you watch things like that, science fiction. So I pick colors from photographs from TV shows, movies, and things like that to inspire me. And then also nature really does inspire me. So lots of brightly colored birds and fish and all sorts of plants, flowers. Particularly since we've lived on this island, I've seen an awful lot of plants and flowers that I've never seen before, and they really are so beautiful and inspiring. And it gives me lots of ideas for dyeing yarn. So we'll see. And as I said, I am a huge nerd, so I run some yarn clubs as well. So I don't know if any of you are knitters, but a lot of knitters, they like to be surprised. So I offer these surprise sock clubs. You can sign up for just 1 month, 6 months, or 12 months, and each package comes and it's a complete surprise to you. I choose the theme, I design a sock pattern, and then you get a little pin badge to go with each club. So it's a whole little kit and caboodle that gets delivered once a month. And I do the Nerd Sock Club, and I also do a Striped Sock Club. Making self-striping yarn is quite challenging. It requires a lot of patience and maths, and both of those things are always a bit difficult for me, but I got there in the end with my working out my sums, and I can create a striping yarn quite easily now, and people love to knit stripy socks. So I'm going to show you a few examples of themes and ideas for the clubs that I've done over the past couple of years. And like I said, the Nerd Club is, because I'm a huge nerd, most of the inspiration comes from TV, science fiction, sometimes games, books that I like to read, comic strips and things like that. So you can see we have top left is Jessica Jones inspired, if anyone's seen the TV show. Then bottom left is Loki inspired. Then we have a Nightmare Before Christmas theme in the middle, Game of Thrones theme. We have a Stranger Things theme, and then we have a Fraggle Rock theme. And all of these clubs were sent out as a surprise to the participants. And I would say 99% of the time, everybody's happy with what they get. And if it's not something they're going to knit for themselves, they'll find someone in their family or friend circle who they can make a garment for and pass it on. And then in more recent clubs, I've been designing a sock pattern to go with the yarn as well. So the latest two have been based on the TV show Wednesday that was just recently on Netflix, and I designed a sock colorway loosely around the show, and then the pattern of the sock had skulls, which you can just see. I think maybe the picture should have been a tiny bit bigger, but and then the next one was based on the Star Wars show Andor, and some of the fashions in the show were so amazing to me. They really did inspire me, all the mustards and olives and burgundies. So that's where that came from. And I did a little Fair Isle emblem that represents part of the TV show in the design. And those were well received. The latest installment is just set to go out, and it was based off of a computer game. As I said, I'm a nerd, so I'm hoping that the members of the club will like that one this month. And then for the striping sock clubs, we have these limited edition self-striping yarns. So they take a lot of effort to dye. As I said, you have to measure out and make sure you only dye a certain length in each color, make it repeatable, and make them stripe. And they do come out really well. And I put these little graphics at the bottom so people can see how these colors are going to stripe when they knit. Mostly, I would say these are definitely sock yarns. The Nerd Club, you could use for anything, but the stripy yarns, it would be a shame if you didn't knit socks with them, because who doesn't love stripy socks, right? And so, so yarn dyeing was the one part of my business, and then designing was the other part. And I've been fortunate enough to get to know in my career some of the people that work at the Knitter magazine. I'm not sure if any of you have heard of that one. It's been running for, gosh, maybe 15, 16 years now. And over the years, they've reached out to me and either asked to use my yarn for designs or asked me to design something for them. So on the left, we have the Floriana jumper, which originally I sent them the sketches for the design, and it was to be a poppy. So it was going to be a green jumper with the red and burgundy petals and a different coloured centre. But this design was it was a labour of love. It was knit front and back separately, and I had graph paper with every single stitch coloured in, and I had to read it row by row as I knitted it, and then I had to meticulously seam the sides to make sure that it all matched. So the flower actually wraps around the side of the body of the vest. And that was a front cover design for the Knitter magazine when that was published. The next one in the middle was a sort of cabled and honeycomb design men's sock. And it was really to showcase the yarn at the time was a new blend of yarn, which was, I believe, a merino, cashmere and silk blend. So it was super soft and super luxurious. And the people at the Knitter wanted to promote the yarn and asked me if I could design a sock in the yarn, so I gave them that. And then on the right we have something that was a Christmas design, and it was the climbing mistletoe socks. Again, I wish I'd got a more detailed picture of this, but there was a floral sort of pattern that twisted around the leg, and also bobbles that looked like little berries that went up and around the feet as well. I always loved the photography that the professionals did in the magazines, because that's something that with my own designs I always try and do them at my absolute best with. And then we've got some of my own designs that these are self-published designs, which I sell as downloadable PDFs from my website, and also on other platforms, which I'm going to talk about in a moment. So we have some shawl designs that I've done. At the time I was doing these really intricate gradient yarns where I would machine knit for all intents and purposes, a canvas. It would be a flat piece of knitting, and I would hand paint with a paintbrush with my dyes a gradient, and then I would unpick that sheet of knitting to knit the shawls. And I did that for a number of years, and it was quite a challenge, but the results were always quite pleasing to the eye. And then I have some sock designs. On the left, we've just got a basic sort of zigzag slip stitch pattern, which looks really nice in the variegated yarn. And then in the middle, we've got a seashell type pattern, which I just used 2 colors, and I flipped it so that you've got mismatched heels, toes and cuffs on the socks. And then another one of the club socks here was, this pattern was called Embers, and it looks slightly like a flickering flame that's passing up the front of the leg. And these are just some of the designs that I've come up with over the years and been selling quite well, because they really do make hand-dyed yarns look the best. And other things that I do, I hand dye fibers for spinning. As you can see, I have a very modern looking spinning wheel. It's not like something from Sleeping Beauty. It's a little electronic spinning wheel. And you can see my little sausage dog Sweep is sitting underneath the coffee table whilst I'm spinning. I love to spin yarn. It's one of those really therapeutic things to do. Once you master the basics of spinning, it's just lovely, mind numbing and relaxing. And I love to see how from the dyed fiber to the prepared fiber to the spun yarn, the difference in the colors is amazing. And I love to do, I just really do love all fiber crafts. And here we have some of my weaving as well. So this is in one of the custom spun yarns that I got spun in Devon, and I dyed in, I believe it was 30 colors. And I made a warp of all 30 colors, and then I used a gray and an undyed yarn to make the weft. And it just came out really, really beautiful. And it was a blue face yarn with alpaca blended into it, so really soft, really warm. And once it came off the loom and was washed, it was really full and lovely. Yeah, and then as I said, I also teach, so I prepare my own resources, and then I go to events all over really, and I'll teach pretty much anything that they ask me to teach in the realms of knitting, spinning, weaving or dyeing. One of the most popular classes that I do teach is two-handed colour work, which is where these still photographs are taken from, where lots of people who knit Fair Isle would carry the yarn in one hand and drop the colour when they want to change colour, I teach people how to use their left and right hand at the same time and how to twist the floats of the yarn so you don't get any snags. And it's a real challenge. That's an advanced course, but most people leave really excited to crack on with their next Farewell project. What else have we got? Now, some of you may have seen this jumper. This is a famous or infamous jumper. In 2017, I was approached by a production company for Kirsty's Handmade Christmas. Now, I'm not sure how all of you feel about Kirsty Allsop. She was a very nice lady the day I met her. She was very nice to my mum, and she told me that she wanted me to win the show. I didn't win, but it was a fun experience. I got asked on, I think it was the 26th of August, for a 4th of October filming date to knit a Christmas jumper. And I decided that a very fine weight, very small needles, very intensive colour work Farewell jumper was the way to go. I regretted it at 5 a.m. the day before the filming of the show because I was not complete, but it all turned out okay in the end. I was just a little disappointed that I didn't win. But as you can see, I put my little sausage dog sweep in the sleeves, and in the writing at the bottom it says "dash hand through the snow," and on the front of the jumper it said "Merry Christmas 2017." It's still one of my favorite jumpers that I've ever designed, and I don't know that I'd ever knit another one, but it was fun to do. And it's all in my hand-dyed merino, which I love the bright neon colors. And this jumper really does just say me, it's really all about the bright colors and childhood Christmases of neon lights and shiny baubles and things like that. So it was a good experience. Now, I know that knitting can be quite a solitary thing, so I'd like to emphasize the point that you can make knitting a social thing. Like Dawn was saying, that one of the ladies that was going to come tonight can't because she's at her knitting group, and that's what I encourage people to do, is go out and join knitting groups. And if you can't get out, like during lockdown, I did twice a week, an hour live on Instagram, where I would sit with the camera on and talk to anybody that wanted to talk to me. Usually I'd get between 12 and 20 people signing in, and just they're all sitting there with their knitting, and I'm knitting and talking rubbish, and we're having a drink and a chat. And it's important to stay social. You can do that through Facebook, and I don't know if any of you do know or use Ravelry. Ravelry was really a big game changer in the knitting world, I believe, and I'm going to talk about that a bit on the next slide. So since it started in, I think, 2007, Ravelry now has over 9 million users worldwide. There is a humongous amount of free knitting, crochet, and other yarn craft patterns available. There is also a lot of paid digital downloads there as well. And I did sell my patterns on Ravelry for a long while, but now I solely sell them on my own website. But it's a great place to keep a log of all your projects. If you ever knit something and you want to know what needle size you used, what yarn brand you used, what size you made it in, you can keep a track of all of those things in your projects page. And if you just want a simple pattern to download, you can type in what it is you're looking for, cables or lace or sweaters, socks, shawls, and you can find free patterns, paid for patterns, links to blogs. There's lots of different things that Ravelry, I always tell people it's a Facebook for knitters, because it really is. You can chat online with other people who are using Ravelry. I have a forum on there for my own business for Easy Knits, where people can ask questions, post pictures of what they're knitting with my yarns. I think as social media has become more prolific, it doesn't do as well as it used to, but for those hardcore knitters that still want to keep a track of all their projects, it's a really, really useful tool. And if you don't have an account with Ravelry, it's free, and I thoroughly recommend, even if you just wanted to get access to all the free patterns, if you're ever going to be using patterns to teach kids to knit, it's a great resource, and I thoroughly recommend it. Other ways to mix with knitters is to go to events. I probably did too many events, if I'm honest. I used to do maybe 8, 9 events. That was probably one every 6 weeks, I think, in a year. I cut it right down, and then, of course, when lockdown happened, we couldn't do shows anymore. I think this picture is probably one of the last shows that I did before lockdown, actually. And it's a really great way to go and meet other knitters, chat with other people, see what other textiles people are doing, and actually touch and hold and look at in person the yarns, because knitting is a very tactile craft, and to just order things online, it's sometimes not enough. So I often encourage people to come to the shows, even if they don't want to buy the yarn that day, they just want to touch it, they can. It was a great thing to do. So I've added a few of the great shows that I thoroughly recommend you get to if you can, and I've just listed the ones that I know of. There are plenty all the way around the UK. Waltham Abbey Wool Show is close to London, run by 2 crazy ladies that I really love them. One is a crochet designer, the other is just an avid knitter, and it's a one-day show in a hotel on a Sunday, and it's great to go to. Unravel in Farnham is one of the best to go to. It's just amazing, and it's in a really lovely venue with loads and loads of great yarn dyers and crafters attending. Wonderwool Wales is a bit further afield. I attended that show for maybe 7 or 8 years, and it's held at the Royal Welsh Showground, so it's a bit cheapy and a bit in the middle of nowhere, but it's also a great show, and you get to people take rare breed sheep to the show, and you get to see all sorts there. It's really good. Wool at Junction 13, that's more of a Midlands-based show, pretty good show to go to. Yarndale in Skipton, that's Yorkshire way, another really great show to go to, and they put on lots of great events during the show as well. And Glasgow School of Yarn, that's a really good one. They do lots of classes there. I've taught them myself a few times. Really like that show. And final thoughts. I really didn't know what to say here. My slogan for Easy Knits is knit with colour, and I really can't recommend it enough. Knitting with bright colours, vivid colours, something cheerful and happy, it really just brightens your day. So knit with colour. Always learn new skills. When I first started Easy Knits, all I could do was knit. Now I knit, crochet, spin, weave, dye. I even since lockdown invested in a sewing machine, and I now make knitting project bags to sell and things like that. So always learn new skills. Experiment. Don't be afraid to experiment. I can't tell you how many skeins of yarn I've thrown away because they've ended up being a muddy mess. But these things you have to try. You just play with colour, play with dyes, mix them, match them, and just have fun. And then the last one is play with yarn. It doesn't have to be for knitting, it can be for anything, but yarn it's such a versatile medium, and not enough people knit these days, so I can't recommend it enough. So I'm gonna hand over the screen back to Dawn, and if I can.
Thank you so much, John. That was brilliant. Really, really interesting. Really interesting.
Sorry, I waffled on quite a lot.
No. Yeah. 45 minutes. That's not bad. I just got a couple of questions going through. Being not a hand knitter, but a machine knitter and a knitwear designer myself. I was wondering, you did talk about some of the fibres that you use, but it's predominantly merinos that you use for merino work.
It's mostly selfish reasons. It's the easiest to dye. It takes the colour so brilliantly. But over the years, I've had lots and lots of blends of yarn that I've stocked. So the custom blended ones from Devon, there's a Blueface, Exmoor Blueface, and there was a Zwarbles, which is a long-haired grey sheep, I believe. So the undyed yarn was like a natural grey colour. So whenever you added colour on top of that, it gave a really exciting result.
I used to use merino, predominantly merino. I still do use merino with my knitwear. The interesting one thing I wanted to know is, how does it wash? Because I have a lot of, like, my jumpers, people phoning up saying, oh, I've stuck it in the machine at 30 degrees and it's shrunk to get size. How do they wash? I'm afraid. And does the dye stick? Does it actually?
Yeah, in 15 years, I think I probably had one, maybe two customers who didn't quite adhere to the washing instructions on the labels that I give my yarn with, and maybe the colours have run a little bit, but I'd say 99% of the time it's pretty good. Cool wash to start with, and then build up your confidence the more you wash it.
And how do you heat set it? What do you use to heat set it?
So I use bain-maries, so like catering warming trays. So they simmer at 90 degrees, and I then add citric acid to the liquid, and eventually you just push a spoon in, and eventually the liquid becomes more and more clear until there's nothing left. And then I actually just use plain old washing up liquid to rinse the yarn, and that catches and pulls any dye crystals that have managed to twist themselves into the threads of the yarn. So it's trial and error, really, over the years and years of how to best handle the yarn, and you can't be too frightened of it. That's why I like working with merino. If it's a non-superwash yarn, you have to be a bit more delicate, and you have to wait till it's pulled down totally, because you don't want to shock it and felt it. So
Nikki's asking, do you recommend any particular type of food dye for the teachers if they want to try it themselves?
Well, I mean, I only ever use for the food colouring, I only ever used Kool-Aid, which, I mean, I'm assuming you can still, I think if you went onto Amazon and searched it, you could still get Kool-Aid. But any food colourings like that you use for cake decorating or things like that, as long as you set it with an acid, so that's why I mentioned the distilled white vinegar, because that's acidic enough to fix the food colouring to the yarn.
And you used mostly you were dyeing skeins of yarn, but then towards the end you showed some actual fibre. So do you buy that raw fibre from, or is it's pre-washed fibre? I assume not raw. Yeah.
So the technical term is roving. So it's prepped. I have once tried to wash a fleece, and I have a drum carder, so I can card the fleece, but it's an awful pain. Yeah. So there's a great website called World of Wool, and they sell all breeds of sheep blended into tops or rovings. So and that just it's yay round, and you get like 100 grams, and you just squish all the water into it and then you can dye it. But yeah, preparing a fleece is a labour of love for sure.
Yeah. Thank you so much. I don't know if anybody else has got any questions that they want to ask. There's not many questions in the. I think you said everything. To be honest, it was really
interesting
chat. Yeah. Thank you so much.
Very welcome.
Yeah, and I think we can leave you to get back to Lanzarote, your studio, etc.
Yes, I'm going to carry on with my
with your stripy socks.
Yeah, I'm working on a stripy sock at the moment, and then I literally just finished this sock this afternoon. So I'm going to take photographs of this.
I love the stitch. It's absolutely gorgeous.
Yeah, it's just a lattice cable pattern, and
do you put a different yarn? A yarn mixed with nylon in the heel and toe? There's another question.
This is all merino nylon, so it's a 75-25. It'll last longer, but you can just do the toes. But as long as it's knitted right, pure merino would last fine. But I always throw in nylon ones just.
Yeah, well, it always goes at the heel, doesn't it? I find
it does. Yeah.
Anyway, thank you so much. I just want to remind everybody that the next Tea and Chat is with Rachel Addy, that's on the 11th of July, and she's going to show us how to create simple videos that you can use in school, that you can use to advertise your course or your department or your school even. So and it's all very, very simple and effective methods of just creating a little video for advertising your school. Remember that to sign up for Textile Teachers Centre, if you're not on Textile Teachers Centre, Facebook groups, and to go to the website. We've got lots of courses. We've got a course coming up next week at Coventry, Service Textiles course at Coventry. Still some places left on there. There's places left on the Fashion Outcomes course at the Genome Centre in 2 weeks' time. And also, I'm looking at Nikki now. When's the next one? July the 1st. We've got the heat press course. And then we've got lots of exciting things happening that we are preparing for during the summer, and the autumn, as we've just got full of. It's going to be rammed, absolutely ram-packed. It's going to be brilliant. We've got loads of events happening in the autumn. Thank you again, John. Absolutely brilliant.
My pleasure.
And I'd just like to say goodbye to everybody. Thank you.
Bye.